We're looking so pretty.
I feel pretty.
So pretty. Time to.
I will thump you.
I wouldn't do that more than once or twice. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is another Tuesday night. It is another night with the legend, Ben Stowe. Good evening, Ben.
Hi, John.
Hey, it's great to be back. It's great to have some time together to talk about some things. And it's great to not be outside right now in our neighborhood.
Well, yeah. I heard on the radio this morning it was minus 30 outside, so I stayed in bed until it warmed up to about minus 17. At which point I screenshotted it, posted it on Facebook, and decided to go to work.
Yeah, that's how we do it up here, man. Once it hits 20, it's 20 or yeah. Cold stuff. Well, tonight we're going to do a quick little show. I wanted to talk about speaker connections, wires, and the connections on the back of speakers. And I mentioned that to you, and I think once again you just kind of went a little crazy and brought a lot of props in for us to look at tonight.
You know, I was actually thinking about that again tonight. I like this game. You know, the game where you send me a message about an hour before we shoot, say, how about we do speaker connect? Okay, maybe it's 2 hours. How about we do speaker connections tonight? And I show up back here at the NLFX headquarters and literally run around. And this is about 5 minutes of work. I love this place. I love this place because it is like a great big toy store for geeks. And I can find all these things, laying around. And while we're talking about things we love, I probably should send a shout out to, I'll let him be anonymous, but it's a good thing. A longtime viewer of ours messaged me tonight for the first time, but said he's been watching for a long time. And it came at a timely moment because, I've got a 13-hour round trip drive to go do a theater consult. Immediately after which I then fly to New York for a week. And shout out to my friends that are bringing me out there, by the way. I think this Thursday night, if you haven't checked that out, go check out the Hudson Valley DJ Association and come see me if you're anywhere in the eastern half of the U.S. I'll make it worth your while. But anyway, I was really seriously contemplating just saying, I just can't do this tonight. There isn't enough time, and he said, boy, I just really enjoy your show. And I thought, I got to do it. So thank you, anonymous viewer, for persuading me to drive down here in the sub-zero weather and do another show. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot.
Yeah, and for those of you out there who are watching, if you've gotten something from some of the shows, let us know. Give us some feedback and such. If there's something you like, something that you'd like to see us do or look at, what have you. But we really appreciate hey, even when you see us in the hallway, to come up and say, hey, watch the show. Even that is just kind of cool because sometimes it sounds like Ben and I are just talking to ourselves all the time.
I do that a lot, but no, we're sensitive. We're sensitive.
Yeah, exactly. For those who are wondering why we do this, basically, Ben and I are both very passionate about our industry. And this is kind of a way of us giving back to the industry and helping those of you who watch our videos maybe improve in one little area.
Well, I think I said it before. I'm certain that I did. But we're all beneficiaries of those who were willing to teach us. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think this is in that vein.
Okay, that's enough of us rambling around. Now let's get into the fun stuff. Let's talk.
Well, that's the show.
That's it. Now, thank you for watching us next week. Tune in and catch part 2. Speaker cable connections. Let's kind of start with what I would kind of consider one of the oldest connections that I used in the speaker world. Well, let's actually go back to when I was. No, we won't go back to when I was wiring Dad's van, because that's a whole different world.
All right. Well, I've got a bunch of them here, so I'm just waiting to see what you come up with.
Well, let's start with the basic. Let's start with the old barrel, the 1/4-inch barrel plug. Right there it is. Now, how long has that been around? As far as I know, I used that in the 80s. I mean, is that something that went back even farther than that?
Well, it's based on an old telephone plug. I don't know when it was first used for speakers, to be honest with you, but the connector itself goes back a long, long, long time. And you got me on another one. I don't know exactly how long. It seems to me at one point I did know, but so long ago I forgot.
Yeah.
Since the early original telephone switchboards, one ringy dingy, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah. Hey, there we just
part of the party line where your neighbor could listen in on your phone.
The old laughing where she was connecting. Wow, there's a flashback. So I guess we both aged ourselves right there. Man, we knew about that.
Well, I'll tell you what. Fortunately, I didn't live in that era. I did grow up in the era of the rotary phone, and I don't know if my kids will ever know why we say dial a phone or roll down a window. But my mom actually, in her childhood, grew up in where it's still out on the farm. They had the party line phones where literally the neighbors could listen in. You got a hot date today? Well, what's going on? And the whole neighborhood could just tune in.
Yeah, and that's right. Yeah, those were the connections. So at that 1/4-inch plug now what is there part of it that's when they're wired consistently, which they should be? Is there a hot and a cold on that, or how are those the sleeve and the tip? How are they put together?
Yeah, there is a standard designator for now. When we refer to positive and negative, to get kind of technical, which never happens on our show.
No, not a bit.
Since a speaker signal is actually changing and inverting polarity all the time, we talk about things like polarity and phase, and so what we're talking about is when this is in its normal polarity. Never mind the signal itself, but the designator for polarity. Now that we've confused everybody, the tip is designated as positive, and the sleeve is designated as the negative.
Now, in a situation where you would have a tip ring sleeve, what is different than that configuration?
Well, you wouldn't with a loudspeaker. There isn't a tip ring sleeve loudspeaker connection that I'm aware of.
Okay.
As far as a 1/4-inch. For a line level signal, yes. And this is maybe a good place to insert a lot of confusion that people have now in the world of active speakers, powered speakers, where the amplifier is built into the speaker. What we're talking about here are cables that go between an amplifier and a speaker. So I'll have people refer to speaker cables, and they're asking for an XLR cable, which is a line level signal.
Ah, yes.
So there is where you would maybe have a TRS tip ring sleeve 1/4-inch. But in the case of a speaker level signal coming from the amplifier to the passive loudspeaker, I've never seen a TRS cable used.
Okay, so that's kind of a neat rule of thumb. If you see a tip ring sleeve, you're talking about most likely a line level?
Yeah, most likely. Now, you could use a TRS connector. Only the tip and the sleeve would be making, we only have 2 conductors inside this cable. So only the tip and the sleeve would be going to anything.
There we go. Yeah, just the 2 wires. Now, is there? I mean, that was very common, and all speakers had that for the longest time. And then it seemed that a point in the probably early 90s, we started seeing banana plugs, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, the MDP plug, banana plug. There you go.
Okay. Now, is there a difference in why did they move away from the 1/4-inch to the banana? Why were we starting to see that, especially on some subwoofers?
Well, I don't know if necessarily there was a move in one direction or another, in terms of an industry-wide thing. But one of the reasons, particularly with a subwoofer, that you might want to consider the banana is there's a lot more surface area. You're making a lot more of a contact here. If we look at the amount of the 1/4-inch that's actually going to make contact, it's a very small piece. Once it's touching that tab inside, we're talking about a very, very small contact area, whereas with the banana plug, you have a lot of meat here making contact. And subwoofers typically draw a lot more power than the high-frequency boxes. Those big, long, deep wavelengths that a subwoofer is going to reproduce are going to suck up the power. So that's probably why you would see that. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the 1/4-inch for 2 reasons. One is the small surface area, and 2 is it's easy to pull out. And 2, I'm less of a fan of a banana plug for the reason that it's very easy to pull out. Also, there are other models of banana plugs that have terminals exposed, and so in essence, you can be exposed to the current coming out of the back of the amplifier, and I'm just not a fan of that either.
Sure.
But anyway, that's one of the reasons that we saw banana. The other way, the other reason is these fit into like a five-way binding post on the back of an amplifier, the red and black screw in things where you could stick in bare wires and screw them down, or these would stick in the back. But that's why we started to see more of the banana plug. I think, well, I don't know if, again, I don't know if it really was more, if it was just more where you happen to look.
Yeah. Very possible. Yeah. Very possible. Let's talk about the bare wire idea now. Is that something that was used mainly in install? Got its wire, or was it something that people were actually using on the road?
Well, I would say primarily install, because it's difficult to connect, and certainly as you connect and disconnect, you're wearing that connection, and the wires begin to fray, and it's not a very elegant solution. That's not to say that there aren't people today that aren't using that for mobile applications. It just wouldn't be advisable. That would be the least of my favorites. Although in terms of an actual connection, it's pretty good. You have a lot of surface area, and it's making good contact, and it's securely tightened in if done correctly. But for install, that's where I would go, but for mobile, I would not. Sometimes for install, we also see devices like this. This is called a Phoenix connector, where it's bare wire goes in, and that's then inserted into the amplifier or the loudspeaker, or both on either end.
And the wiring of that connector, and the wiring of that little install connector is a little bit different than what a typical DJ would be thinking of wiring a speaker, if I'm not mistaken on that.
Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, again, the connector is certainly different. We don't see a lot of these used in the mobile world. They're designed for install. They're good for that, but there are far better connectors for mobile, and I'm sure we'll be getting to my favorite here after a bit. But and it's not just my favorite; it's really become kind of the new de facto standard because it was specifically designed for speaker connections, and it does so many things well.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of install, yeah.
And I think that we saw a period of time, and I think I actually, not to throw a brand under the bus, but I think there was one of the brands that actually went to using XLR connections for their unpowered speakers.
Yeah, I've seen that. There is no rule. You could use anything you want. Pick any connection you want, and it could be done. Of course, the nice thing when everybody kind of rows together is that everything works together. Yeah. That's a big plus.
Oh, that would be because a typical XLR cable, microphone cable, what gauge wire would you typically be running with that?
Well, with an XLR mic cable, you're typically looking at something between 24 and 20 gauge. 24 is awful thin. I tend to prefer cables that are closer to 20, but with loudspeakers, we want something much bigger. And as the gauge number gets smaller, the wire gets bigger. For example, every time we decrease the gauge number by 3, we double the area of the wire. So from a 14 gauge to an 11 gauge, the 11 gauge has twice as much wire area of the wire. Excuse me. So, with a loudspeaker, we want to be, probably, I would say 14 to 12 minimum, or 10 even maybe, 16 sometimes on some of our lower powered stuff. Depends on how far you're running, what the impedance of your loudspeaker is, and how much power you're running through it.
Yeah, it's an interesting. So, can there be a time when the gauge of the wire is too great for the application beyond just handling it?
Not really. No, not really. It doesn't absorb your power. The bigger the gauge, the better. Now, there's a point of diminishing returns. Where using 4/0 feeder cables that are that big around probably doesn't serve you any purpose, and that's because copper is heavy and copper is expensive. We want to find a good balance, and 14 or 12 is certainly adequate for most loudspeaker applications. I've got I believe I have a chart on my blog. If I don't, I'll hurry up and get that on there. That shows you some recommended loudspeaker gauges depending on your loudspeaker's impedance and the length of your run. And there's a bit of physics into why the impedance of the loudspeaker matters. And I promise I keep this one a short show tonight, so another time.
The blog. The
Yes.
web address for the blog. Give
Now I've got more to write. Thanks a lot.
Yes, well, you're the one who opened it up. You opened a can of worms, man.
I did. Yes,
the URL is.
Oh, benstowe.com.
There you go. Thank you. I
really need to get on there and get it updated.
Yeah, I'm guessing you've got now. How long before you leave for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get to one of the more popular connections. Now, in your search, did you find some other connections for us that we haven't talked about so far?
No, not really. That you've pretty well covered all the other ones that I wanted to talk about.
So let's get to the one that is the and click that we really like. Where's that speaker?
And click, yes.
The speak on.
Yeah, let's go to the most common iteration of speak on that people would recognize is probably this one.
Yes.
There are several different flavors of speak on though. We can see two variations here.
Okay.
This one is a 2-conductor model, meaning there's only 2 connections inside. This one is a 4-conductor model, meaning this will carry 4 wires inside. So for example, if I had a biamp system and I wanted to power a high-frequency device and a low-frequency device, but I only wanted to run 1 cable, this would allow me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What's neat about these two is they're interchangeable in terms of their interconnectivity. Here's an example. This is what you would find on your loudspeaker or maybe on your amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the speak-on goes into. And on the back, we can see that there are 4 connections.
Oh, yeah.
You see that?
Yep.
Okay. And there's our 4 connections. So 1 plus, 1 minus, 2 plus, 2 minus for our 2 different loudspeakers. The 2-conductor cable locks in here just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it will only make contact with 1 plus and 1 minus. The other pair is simply not used in this instance. But that works just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And as you saw, it locks in too. It's a very firm connection. And so we don't have to worry about that coming out. We don't have to worry about our amp trying to modulate a signal with no load on it. Things that, like I said, were an issue with Banana or quarter inch. But this 4-conductor, of course, also fits the 4-conductor cable. So that's kind of nice. The NL2 and NL4 are the part numbers for this particular connector, NL2 and NL4FC. There's a whole family of speak-on connectors, by the way. And they both fit into this connector just fine. There is another model of speak-on, though, and this is what I use on my line array and whatnot, but it's fairly common for that because it is the NL8. And you can see it's quite a bit larger.
Yeah. Than
the NL2 and 4. And inside the NL8, as its name implies, there are 8 connections. Here we see an NL8 connector.
Mm-hmm.
Did I mention how much I love this place? I can just run around and find this stuff.
I was going to say, I don't know if I've ever seen an 8.
Here we see inside the NL8, there are 8 cups in there for conductors. Another thing that's kind of neat about the speak-on connectors is that they're not soldered in. They are screwed in. There's screws that tension those down.
That was my question. I was just going to ask you, yeah, because that one I couldn't tell if it was pins or if there were screws or how that would work.
Yeah, and what's great about that is, you simply insert the wire. And I'm going to make a mess of this on live TV. Of course, you have to loosen the screw first. But anyway.
Sure.
You insert the wire and then you tighten down the screw. And one of the things that's really nice about that is they're field serviceable. All you need is a screwdriver. And if you have a wire come loose, you can fix it. If you have a wire break, you can repair it. That's one of the things I like about those.
But no solders used on that configuration whatsoever.
Correct. Sometimes they'll tin the wire to make it a little more rigid, but that's not a part of the physical connection. It's not required.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And what we see here, because there's 8, is we actually have 4 pairs. So, for example, into line array box, for example, if it's tri-amped, I've got a high, a mid, and a low mid inside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows me to just run 1 cable and connect all 3 of those devices from 1 cable. So, and of course, I have a pair left over at that point. So if it was a 4-way box, it would accomplish that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. And again, they lock in, which is great, you know, particularly when you've got these things going up in the air. But even for, you know, anybody, having a cable that locks in and makes a secure, consistent connection is good. And inside here, it's difficult to see, but there's actually quite a lot of surface area that makes contact. I don't know if you can see it, but you know, really.
Yeah, we can see a little bit, but not much. Yeah.
Yeah, tough to see. But the good folks at Neutrik that invented these, as the name implies, Speak-On, they invented these 4 speakers. Period. Now, if you have an old 1/4 inch and you desire to use a Speak-On, there are devices like this.
Adapter.
Allow you to do that. Just in case you wanted to. However, as I said, it's not, this is a locking 1/4 inch, by the way. It locks in there. That's one way the 1/4 inch is a little more survivable.
Sure. But you'd still have the same situation where you're only having contact with the tip in a very small area.
Correct, exactly. And it's just on the edge of the tip is where that contact is made, too. When you look at a 1/4 inch jack, I didn't bring a jack here to show you. But anyway, because these Speak-Ons are so easy to attach, it's just a screwdriver and a wire stripper. You know, if you've got a 1/4 inch cable and you're thinking about using it for a Speak-On box, just buy the Speak-On connectors from us, of course, and don't worry about these kinds of things unless there's some need to preserve the 1/4 inch connection and have Speak-On. Just cut this off and put a Speak-On connector on it and be done with it.
Sure.
That's my 2 cents.
So now, if a person had like a box, an older cabinet that you just absolutely love, and you want to convert it over to a Speak-On type connection, what would be entailed with that? Granted, each box is going to be a little different, but in general, what would a person need to do?
Well, it's tough to say without looking at the box, but we sell these connectors too. Depending on the way your box is built, you could mount this into the plate on the back of the box. We have other models that are a little bit bigger around, so it has more surface area to mount with. You can drill a hole in the wooden part of the box and mount that on there. And then these do solder, so you would want to modify that inside. But it's really not that difficult to do that either. Pretty much, if you have a loudspeaker that has 1/4 inch connections on it, it's been around a while, I would bet. And certainly. I think all loudspeakers go to heaven. It might be time for that one to go to heaven. So,
quite possibly. But it's my favorite speaker.
But the interconnectivity between the two is really simple. Here we've got a cable with a 1/4 inch and a Speak-On type connector. This is a Chinese knockoff, if you will. But that's the only cables I had with 1/4 inch laying around anymore. Sorry if I'm offending people like you, but
yeah, I'm really offended now.
I was reading this article that said, if you want your show to be popular, you just can't be nice. I got to be a little edgier. I got to take a hard stance on 1/4 inch connectors. We're gonna get a buzz going on social media. Like, Ben, he's 1/4 inch connectors.
1/4 inch are my favorite, man, and they're dissing them.
Yeah, I am. So there you go. You got a problem with me? Take it to social media and make me famous. All right. But anyway, we can see tip is positive, sleeve is negative. We'll just take a look at this here. We'll plug the Speak-On in, and there we can see 1 to 1 and 2 to 2.
Sure.
So there we have it. 1/4 inch Speak-On. The whole probs.
Good stuff. Good stuff. If you got any questions for Ben, you can head out to Twitter. You can go in there, do the hashtag NLFXBen, ask a question there, or go to our Facebook page, the Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe, ask a question there, or as most people do, go to the YouTube, below the YouTube video here, and ask questions down there. Send a message to us, and we'll pop in there and take a look at that and answer questions if we can, and be confused if we can't.
Hashtag save the 1/4 inch.
Oh,
by the way, it's also called a 6.35 millimeter. So we could get this really going across the globe. It's also called a phone plug. There's all kinds of...
You're just trying to alienate everyone, aren't you?
Yeah. Whatever you want to call it, don't use it for your loudspeakers.
Yeah, exactly. There's new things, make better connection. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight, Ben. I appreciate it as always. This is John Young with the Disc Jockey News and Disc Jockey News TV. Thanks for watching. Good night.